What if Napoleon, George Washington, and the Russian emperor from the 1700s all wore the exact same clothing as people who supposedly lived 1400 years before them? Look at these images. Here's Napoleon Bonaparte in 1769 to 1821. Here's George Washington from 1732 to 1799. And here's Peter the Great, 1672 to 1725. All three are wearing togas, the ancient Roman toga, a garment that, according to our history books, disappeared when Rome fell in 476 AD. The official explanation says this was just an artistic style, a vision. But what if that explanation is covering something much bigger? The toga was a semicircular cloth between 12 and 20 feet in length, white wool draped over the shoulders. It was the formal wear of Roman citizen men, the favorite dress of Romulus, Rome's founder. This garment defined an entire civilization that supposedly ended over 1,000 years before these men lived. But here's what makes this strange. Before 1418, there was no knowledge of anything ancient. Zero. That's when Poggio Bracciolini supposedly discovered antiquity. Everything we know about ancient Rome came after that moment. The statues, the stories, the entire timeline. According to alternative historians, even Pompeii might not have been buried in 79 AD, as we're told. Some evidence points to 1631. Cleopatra might have been a medieval queen, not an ancient one. The dates we accept as solid fact start looking questionable when you dig deeper. And if you're finding this interesting, hitting that subscribe button really helps this new channel grow. Even one subscriber makes a difference. And if you could drop a like, that pushes this video to more people asking the same questions. Now, back to those togas. This wasn't just portraits and statues. Look at this photograph from the 1870s. A crowd gathers around a toppled statue of Napoleon in Paris during the Franco-Prussian War. May 1871, the Place Vendôme. The people in this photograph are wearing what looks like togas. Not painted, not imagined, real fabric, real people. Not ancient, not 1,000 years gone, right there in the photographs. Then there's the statue of George Washington. He's seated, massive, wearing a toga, his right arm raised. This isn't a painting with artistic liberty. This is a sculpture that was commissioned, carved, and displayed. If togas were just ancient history, why create this? Alexander Suvorov, 1730 to 1800, Russian military commander, same thing, depicted in Roman military dress. The pattern repeats across different nations, different time periods, all within the 1600s to 1800s. Now look at the truly ancient depictions. Marcus Aurelius, 121 AD to 180 AD. There's a relief showing him at a sacrificial ceremony with the temple of Jupiter Capitolinus in the background. Everyone is wearing togas, but notice something else. The size difference. In ancient Roman art, the figures are often shown at different scales, some much larger than others, much taller. We explain this as artistic hierarchy. The important people were drawn bigger. But what if the important people actually were bigger? Not just in Roman art, but in Egyptian, Chaldean, Syrian, Babylonian, and Assyrian art as well. Different civilizations, same pattern. Larger rulers, smaller subjects. The term Your Highness or Your Majesty is explained officially as a formal way to address royalty. His Highness for a man, Her Highness for a woman, Your Royal Highness for princes and princesses, Your Imperial Highness for imperial families, Your Majesty for kings, queens, emperors, and empresses. But according to alternative interpretations, these titles might mean exactly what they say. What if Your Highness literally referred to someone's height, someone taller, larger, more physically imposing? Not a metaphor, a measurement. Now, look at the architecture. The Parthenon in Athens, constructed supposedly from 447 BC to 332 BC, ancient Greek. Then look at the Parthenon in Nashville, Tennessee, constructed in 1897 out of horsehair and plaster, then rebuilt between 1925 and 1931 as a permanent structure. They're nearly identical. One is called ancient, one is called a replica, but both exist in physical space. Both require the same architectural knowledge. Both demonstrate the same building capabilities. The only difference is the condition they're kept in and the story we tell about them. The Peter and Paul Cathedral in Sevastopol, built 1840 to 1842, the same classical style, columns, proportions, design language. Photographs from the 19th century showed this building looking already aged, already classical. The Madeleine Church in Paris, built 1807 to 1828, founded by Napoleon. Again, the same ancient style. If these techniques were lost for over 1,000 years, how did they come back so perfectly? Compare the Roman Pantheon, supposedly 113 AD, with the French Pantheon from 1765 AD. Compare the Arch of Titus in Rome, supposedly 82 AD, with the Triumphal Arch of Moscow from 1834 AD. The designs are nearly identical. The construction methods would need to be the same. The knowledge would need to be the same. One theory suggests this. What if the ancient structures and the modern structures were built at relatively the same time? What if only the difference is which ones our institutions choose to preserve as ancient and which ones they acknowledge as modern? What if Napoleon, Washington, Peter the Great, and Marcus Aurelius belonged to the same civilization? What if the 1,000+ years separating them on our timeline is incorrect? What if some of them existed at the same time? Think about the doors. Look at the massive doorways in classical buildings, the entrances to cathedrals, the portals of government structures. Many are 15, 20, even 30 feet tall. We say this was for grandeur, for majesty, for making people feel small before institutions. But look at that statue of George Washington again. If he stood up from that seated position, he'd walk right through a 20-foot door comfortably. The door's size would make perfect sense. The Winter Palace in Russia. The upper floors were for servants, smaller rooms, lower ceilings. The lower floors for royalty, massive rooms, soaring ceilings. We say this showed wealth and power, but what if it showed something simpler? Different sizes of people living in the same building. The servants were regular human height. The royalty were not. There are depictions throughout history of rulers standing head and shoulders above everyone around them. We explain this as artistic symbolism, important people drawn larger. But artistic symbolism came from somewhere. Symbols represent something real before they become abstract. According to this alternative view, these larger humans were called Your Highness and Your Majesty because of their superior height, power, and abilities. What if they were the ones Newton referenced when he said he stood on the shoulders of giants? What if that wasn't a metaphor, but a historical statement? What if these were the people who built the architecture we still admire? The pantheons, the arches, the cathedrals, structures we can barely recreate today with modern technology. What if they possessed knowledge we've lost, capabilities we no longer have? They were the aristocracy. The term comes from Greek, aristokratia, meaning rule of the best born, a class of persons holding exceptional rank and privileges, especially the hereditary nobility. But what if hereditary meant something genetic, something biological? What if nobility wasn't about bloodlines and families, but bloodlines and species? According to some researchers, something happened as late as the mid-19th century. Some of these larger humans were still around. Some conflict occurred. The theory suggests humans revolted against their masters, a global war, and the humans won. After that war, multiple cities appeared empty. Abandoned St. Petersburg, ready for repopulation. Abandoned Moscow in 1867. Photographs showing streets without people. Abandoned Toronto in 1856. Abandoned India in the 1860s. Abandoned Venice in the 1870s. All documented, all photographed, all unexplained by mainstream history. Where did the people go? Or where did the other people go? This brings us to a question that sounds impossible. What if humanity as we know it has a very different origin than we've been taught? What if we weren't always at the top of the chain? If this made you think differently, share it with someone who questions things, and check out part 2 to see where this goes.